Hello everybody, Trevor here, and welcome to a brand new top 10 video. And as promised, we'll be discussing my top 10 favorite childhood films of all time. But before we begin, I just want to say, sorry that this took so long to make. I was going to release this last month in August, but I was so busy in real life, including taking care of my dog Max, and take him to the vet at least 3 times in a row in the last couple of weeks. And he's going to have surgery on the 19th of September. And again, sorry for the inconvenience. I'm just a busy guy in real life. Anyway, as the title suggests, I'm only going to pick those that I've seen from my youth. So if your favorite movie isn't on here, then I'm dreadfully sorry about that. Also, I'm not going to add in any Christmas movies because I already talked about them in my top 12 favorite Christmas movies video from last year. And sadly, no sequels. Trust me, I was going to add in The Rescuers Down Under on this list, but I'm going to save that for another video instead. Oh, and one more thing. No direct-to-video movies because some of them are only 30 minutes long, like the 1991 Little Engine That Could movie. This video is only for theatrical releases, and nothing more. Now with those things out of the way, let's begin this brand new top 10, shall we? Number 10 is Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland. Alright, I promise that this is the last time I talk about this anime. And don't worry, not all of these will be from my previous videos. Little Nemo mostly takes place in a dream where Nemo is to become the sole heir of King Morpheus from Slumberland. But because of a broken promise, he wanted to make up for his mistake by rescuing Morpheus and to defeat the Nightmare King once and for all. The reason this is so low on the list is because it was production hell, and it's one of the reasons why it faded into obscurity. But that doesn't mean that this movie is terrible, in my opinion. I did see 2 of the pilots on YouTube, and to be fair, I think they're as good as the actual film itself. Maybe someday someone will make a brand new reimagining of Little Nemo. If you want more information on why I like this anime, then I suggest that you watch my top 5 anime video. Number 9 is My Neighbor Totoro, or at least the original Fox dub. I've already talked about this in my top 5 anime video as well, and I'll try to keep it brief here. My Neighbor Totoro is about 2 little girls named Satsuki and Mei who befriend a mysterious creature named Totoro, and they all had fun together. But as soon as their mother got very sick and Mei runs away to find her, it is up to Satsuki to find Totoro for help. There are 2 dubs to this, the Fox version, which I've grown up with, and the Disney redub of the mid-2000s. While I do understand why some people prefer the redub over the original because, Dakota and Elle Fanning are both sisters, but for me, I'll always prefer the original dub because it had more emotion compared to Disney's redub. I even prefer the term Dust Bunny over Soot Gremlin any day because it sounds cuter. In the original Streamline dub, aka the Fox dub, Satsuki was voiced by Lisa Mitchelson, who unfortunately died in a car crash in 1991. And Mei was voiced by Cheryl Chase, who was best known for voicing Angelica Pickles from Rugrats. Another reason why this is so low is because Fox's rights to it expired in the early 2000s, and as a result, it faded into obscurity, hence why it was redubbed by Disney in the mid-2000s. Number 8 is Once Upon a Forest. I've already explained this in my top 10 movies I like but everyone else hates, and I'll try to keep it short here. The reasons I love this movie is not only the wonderful animation, but also the cute characters and the beautiful emotional music. In fact, I think it's better than Ferngully the Last Rainforest. Not that I hate Ferngully, but still. And because of these reasons, Once Upon a Forest is one of those movies I think deserves better reception than what it got. Number 7, Matilda. I don't know about you, but I love this movie. In fact, this was also one of my mom's favorites back then because of the great humor and awesome acting. My favorite performances were Danny DeVito as Harry Wormwood, the con artist who sells used cars for expensive prices, and Pam Ferris as Miss Trunchbull, the evil principal of Matilda's school. Oh, and I also think Mara Wilson does a pretty good job as the title character. While I haven't read the original novel by Roald Dahl, but one interesting thing about it is that unlike the movie, the original book was published in the United Kingdom where the story takes place. I don't know why they Americanized it in the film, but who cares? It's still fun enough as it is. And I still think Danny DeVito did a great job working on this movie. Oh, and did you know that Roald Dahl also wrote James and the Giant Peach and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? Learn something new every day, am I right? And one more thing I forgot to mention earlier was that one of the FBI agents was played by Paul Reubens, who was best known for playing Pee Wee Herman. He did a good job too. All in all, this is a great fantasy film, and whether you're a fan of the original novel or not, I still think you should pick this one up because it's funny and charming. Number 6. The Great Mouse Detective. This is my favorite Disney film in terms of the Disney Dark Age from the 70s and 80s. This movie is basically Sherlock Holmes, but with mice. The story is about Basil of Baker Street and his sidekick Dawson, who had to help a little mouse girl named Olivia to try and find her lost father, who was kidnapped by the evil Professor Radigan. By the way, Radigan is one of my all-time favorite Disney villains because he was voiced by the late Vincent Price. I especially love the 2 musical numbers that he's in, including The World's Greatest Criminal Mind. Radigan's master plan was to overthrow the Mouse Queen of England, but thankfully, that plan has been stopped by Basil and his friends. Another one of my favorite characters besides Radigan was Toby the Basset Hound, because as you all know, I'm a dog lover. If you look past the frightening moments like with Fidget the Bat, The Great Mouse Detective is an overall great film with good action, memorable characters, an awesome villain, and a couple decent songs despite them being the only songs in the entire movie. While it did lose against Don Bluth's An American Tail at the box office, but I still think The Great Mouse Detective is quite underrated and deserves more attention than what it got. So therefore, I give it an 8 out of 10 stars. Number 5 is Pinocchio from 1940. Pinocchio is about a little wooden puppet who wishes to become a real human boy, but had to face some challenges and obstacles in order to do so. Before World War II struck the Disney Company, Pinocchio was one of the few full-length Disney films at the time, along with Snow White, Dumbo, and Bambi. And Pinocchio would have to be my most favorite of them all because, first of all, I love the likable and relatable characters, including Pinocchio himself, as well as his conscience, Jiminy Cricket. I also enjoy the songs like When You Wish Upon a Star and Give a Little Whistle because they're fun, enjoyable, and sweet. While the movie itself is mostly cute and harmless, it does have a few frightening moments, and not just with Stromboli and Monstro, but the one scene that frightens me the most was the Pleasure Island sequence where all the naughty boys get turned into donkeys and were sold to slavery. But the scariest part of it was Lampwick's transformation sequence, where he panics that he doesn't want to be a donkey at all. It's like turning into a werewolf. That's how scary this is. It also raises so many questions like, what happens to the other boys who don't get sold into slavery? Did they get put out of their misery if they still talked? And the worst part is, the coachman, who was responsible for all this, doesn't even get punished in the end. In other words, he got away with this. What a scoundrel. Could you imagine how many of the boys were reported as missing by their families? Not only is this scene scary, but also very sad when you think about it. But hey, at least Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket escaped Pleasure Island in the end, unlike in the original story where Pinocchio becomes a full-on donkey and was sold to a circus where he was treated very poorly. Overall, despite the dark turns this movie takes, it's still a fun and decent family film with memorable characters and songs. It also has a great message about learning to be good and not fall into temptations. And I think it's better than the original book by Carlo Collodi, so therefore, I highly recommend it. Number 4. The Jungle Book from 1967. Okay, this is the last Disney movie I'll add to this list. The Jungle Book is about a feral child named Mowgli who was raised by wolves, and as time went on, the Wolf Council and Bagheera decided that it was time for Mowgli to be with his own kind at the nearest man village because Shere Khan, the tiger, has returned to find and kill the man cub. But Mowgli doesn't want to go and wants to stay in the jungle with his new friend Baloo. And together, the three of them faced many obstacles along the way until they finally went to the man village where Mowgli belongs. When I was a kid, I've always wondered what the original Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling was like and why Walt Disney thought it was too dark for his own medium. Years later, when I was a college student, I finally purchased the book at Barnes& Noble, and while it does have dark and mysterious moments, and I can understand why Walt Disney wanted to make his own version of it instead, but in my honest opinion, I like them both because they're both good, and they both work well on their own. Besides, I've read worse. The original story was an epic coming-of-age story about a wild boy named Mowgli and his struggles to adapt to human civilization, while the Disney one is a cute, charming, and lighthearted family film. And I've already told the premise of it earlier, so I don't want to repeat myself. Anyways, let's talk about the movie. It's got some of my favorite songs, including The Bare Necessities and I Wanna Be Like You. Not to mention that one of my favorite characters is King Louie himself. I don't know, there's just something about him that makes him funny. And I did use him as my avatar in my Disney and Kingdom Hearts videos. Oh, and speaking of I Wanna Be Like You, my favorite scene of all time had to be the ancient ruins because lost cities like this always make me ponder on why they were abandoned in the first place, which is why they always fascinate me. I also like the monkey chase sequence where the whole kingdom collapses thanks to King Louie's big accident. In addition, I enjoy the villains Shere Khan and Kaa, even though Kaa was originally a good guy in the original book, but personally, I don't mind him being a bad guy in this because most snakes in most other stories are portrayed as villains. And as for Shere Khan, I love his voice and mannerisms because it makes him more menacing. And he's also one of my favorite Disney villains because of it. While I do understand why some Jungle Book fans prefer the original book over the Disney ones, but as I said earlier, they're both good in their own right because they're both well-told stories and had some of the most memorable characters and messages. Disney's 1967 adaptation of the Jungle Book is a perfect example of how coming up with your own material can work sometimes, and I think it ended the golden age of Disney on a perfect note. Unfortunately, I can't say the same thing for everything when it comes to coming up with your own material. Number 3 is Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. This movie was the main reason why I'm in love with old-fashioned cars because their headlamps look like eyes to me. After all, Caroline also has that feature in Thomas and Friends. The movie stars Dick Van Dyke as Mr. Potts, who bought and restored an old racing automobile and renamed her Chitty Chitty Bang Bang due to the noises she makes. This car not only had the ability to fly, but can also float on water, which is pretty cool. There are a lot of other characters and their performances I enjoyed as well. For example, Baron Bombburst, who was the main antagonist of this film, he's not only mean to children, but can also be childish and quite funny too. Here are some fun facts. This movie has a lot of interesting film locations, including the Cobstone Windmill in Buckinghamshire, England, the Longmoor Military Railway in Hampshire, England, and the Neuschwanstein Castle in Bavaria, Germany, which was used as an exterior to Baron Bombburst's castle. In conclusion, this is not only an excellent family film, but a true classic from 1968. It's got great characters, great comedy, excellent casting choices, awesome filming locations, and memorable songs. I would definitely give it a 10 out of 10 stars because it's just that great. Number 2 is Cats Don't Dance. This film is about an orange cat who wants to be a Hollywood star, but had to face an evil child actress named Darla Dimple and his ruthless giant butler named Max, who both want to rid all of the animal stars. Cats Don't Dance, in my opinion, is very underappreciated. The reason it didn't do well at the box office was because it didn't get that much attention in advertising. What I love about this movie are the funny, likable, and relatable characters like Danny, Sawyer, and of course, the main villain Darla Dimple because she's basically a parody of Shirley Temple. She is one of my favorite non-Disney villains because of her funny and charming personality. The movie itself has a lot, and I do mean a lot, of funny moments. For example, King Kong's cameo in one scene where Sawyer asked him how the picture was coming. And he replies with, "Ooh, don't get me started!" You see, that voice and lisp that they gave him cracked me up. Another example of a funny moment a little later on in the scene was where Toto makes a short cameo where he claps his heels together with the ruby shoes and says the classic line, "There's no place like home, there's no place like home, there's no place like home," and then was ordered to get into the basket. As cliched as these Wizard of Oz references and jokes are, this one was quite funny too. All in all, Cats Don't Dance is not only a great and funny film, but a very underrated classic with memorable songs, characters, and story, which is why it deserves the number 2 spot here. Now, before I get to my number 1 pick, I just want to give some honorable mentions. Tom and Jerry the movie. While I still think it's a cute and fun family film, but I can understand why people hate it, so therefore it got omitted from this list. The Secret of Nim. While I do think it's a great movie and that it's superior over its sequel, but it got beat up by The Great Mouse Detective because it's a little bit too frightening for some kids. And it's even got one bad word in it, which is why I think it should have been rated PG instead of G. Robin Hood. It got beat out by The Jungle Book because of its overuse of recycled animation and character designs, but still, I love this movie from the bottom of my heart. The live-action 101 Dalmatians from 1996. I'm thinking talking about this movie another time, like in my top 5 Disney live-action remakes video, which I might do in the future. Toy Story. I'm saving this one for another video, particularly my top 10 Pixar films. And my number 1 most favorite childhood film of all time is The Land Before Time. No offense to Jurassic Park fans, but when it comes to movies about dinosaurs, this is the absolute best one in my opinion for a number of reasons. 1. I love all the characters, but my most favorite one of them all is Ducky the swimmer due to her cuteness. And I think Judith Barcy did an excellent job with her voice. It's too bad she died so young though. 2. I thought the animation by Don Bluth was fantastic. You can tell that a lot of heart and effort went into the production of this movie. 3. Not to mention the well-told story, which is about these little kid dinosaurs who travel through the wastelands to find their new home in the Great Valley, but had to watch out for the dreaded Sharptooth. And 4. I love the movie's soundtrack by James Horner. It's so beautiful, epic, and emotional at the same time. Oh, and the ending credits song, If We Hold On Together, performed by Diana Ross, was really good because it makes me want to tear up. When I was a little kid, I couldn't help but watch this movie over and over and over again because it's so good. In fact, I've watched it so much back in the day that it drove my big sister crazy. It's the biggest reason why it's on the number 1 spot. And because of my reasons for loving this, I give it a 10 out of 10 tree stars. Not only is it the best Don Bluth film from the 1980s, but the best dinosaur movie of all time. And while most of the sequels were either bad or mediocre, but at least they managed to keep my interest unlike most sequels in general. So, do you agree with my list, or do you have your own personal preference? Let me know in the comments section on which films from your childhood you love the most. I'm going to try to make my next video to be about Thomas the Tank Engine, whether it be a top 5, a top 10, or a brand new unboxing video. This is Trevor Davis, signing off.